Hey, Joe Gilder here. Time to get back into this mix. This is Mixed Together number, 6 maybe? 7? Anyway, I'm not going to talk as much this time, and we're going to dive in and do some more work. Plenty of work to do on this mix. Let's take a listen and see where we are.
I've got so much more to give than I could ever take. I got a mission, and I've got so much life to live, and I'm just
All right, so we're going to spend the next good while in mono. So I've clicked the button down here to get into mono.
I've got so much more.
Still sounds like the mix, but obviously we don't have the benefit of all the wideness. And we're going to go from there. Last week we were working on drums. I want to keep working on drums and get that drum sound really popping. So what I'm going to do is spend a few minutes in solo with the drums. Now, I know, even recently I've talked about how don't spend all your time in solo. But for me, the drums are the foundation, and they're really the only thing I will spend a decent amount of time just listening to the drums. Once I get them right, I build everything on top of that. I don't spend a ton of time, but for a couple minutes, I'm going to play just the drums, probably loop this for a bit, and just let it play, and just work on them a little bit. So I'm not going to narrate as I go. I'm just going to go and do some stuff first. We haven't done much to the drums. We've done a little bit to the snare like we did in the last video. Not much else, so let's do some work. Real quick, I'm just did some frequency notching on a few different tracks, room mics, overheads, the snare a little bit more. Here, there's two mics on the kick drum. One is way inside, and then one is outside the drum. The outer one is getting a lot of low end. The inner one is getting a lot of snap. So I'm going to treat them as such and rolling off the highs because there's not much benefit of this kick out having all that highs of the snare and the cymbals and everything else. It's really not helpful. So now it's just getting mostly low end. It's still getting some snare. We could maybe roll off more. I don't want to go extreme on any of this, but just doing that seemed to clean it up a little bit. Now I'm going to deal with the, I can't talk today, the kick drum sound. which is on this bus. I've routed these two to a bus, and I've balanced them how I want them. I'm going to do some stuff to the bus itself. I'll try to zoom in so you can see a little bit better. Okay, kick sounds better. I'm not digging the snare. Probably gonna here's what I'm gonna do. I'm not liking it, and I've already mangled it a little bit. I'm gonna take this compressor and just I'm gonna set it back to the default settings and start over on the compressor. I don't like it. I like the tone by itself, so I do still want to compress first, but I could just use a better tone out of it. So let's just start over. Which, this is a big part of mixing, by the way. You don't have to commit to anything you do. Obviously, you need to move forward and don't overthink everything. But if you don't like something, it's okay to go back and just try again. So the snare, it doesn't matter to me as what it sounds like by itself. I think that maybe did too much of that the last time. So let's just do it. Sorry, I got distracted. I was checking the phase again. I think it's still fine. I'm going to do this in context. So I'm not going to solo the snare as much and just try to get the tone that I want without doing that. Here's something interesting I like about compression on drums. Obviously, there's a decent amount of bleed, and that can just different tone with the amount of bleed we allow in there. A lot of guys will reach for a gate or an expander here. I probably like to adjust the release to give me a little less of the room sound. So fast release, we're compressing and we're letting go, so we're getting to hear everything is being turned up by the makeup gain. By going with a longer release, we may miss some of the when he plays it fast, might get a little lost in the compressor, but I have a plan for that as well. What I'm going to do is do a longer release, so we're just getting a lot of that snap, and then I'm going to use the blend knob here, the mix knob, to basically blend between the compressed signal and the uncompressed signal. I think that's going to give me the tone I'm looking for. Okay, that feels better to me. We've got the snappy compression blended with the dry, non-compressed signal, and I'm digging that a lot more. Now I want to EQ that. I'm going to try something new. I haven't done this really ever. Just see how we like it. I'm going to add a bus. I'm going to bus the overhead and rooms to their own bus. And I'm actually going to, this is interesting. I'm going to use this as a master bus and not send the overhead and the rooms to the compressor. So we'll call this drum S for the drum spot mics are going through the bus we had already. And we'll create a new bus for the overall drums, all caps drums. We'll call this a drum spot. So I've got the, let me just color code these because color coding is fun. So the drums are going through these two. Everything, here, I'll show you. Look. Kick, snare, tom, claps, hi-hat, tambourine are all going through here. I might move the hi-hat and tambourine. But for now, the overhead and the rooms are going through here, and then both of these are going through here. It's interesting because now the bus compression and EQ can be different on the overhead and the rooms. The reason being, this is what I'm hearing in the overhead and the rooms. Very boxy sounding. I need some of that mid-range out, but I don't want to do it. I don't want to EQ them individually. I like to treat them as a unit if I can. And I also, I don't know, it just sounded like fun. I can maybe be more aggressive with the compression on the drum bus, the original drum bus, and not on this one, and they don't get all the pumping and stuff that happens. So let's just see what happens. I don't know, man. I may go back and revert all of this, and it's totally fair game, but sorry, right at the end, that was me EQing the bass. I had a little too much low end, which I'm sure you've been thinking the whole time. I like it. So you may have seen, if you couldn't tell what I was doing, I was switching the output of my overhead and rooms bus from being going to the main output to going to the drum spot channel with the compression already on the track. And it sounds different both ways. I'm used to the sound of it going through the compressor, which is that sound where when the snare hits, everybody kind of bows to the snare for a second. And when the kick hits, everybody bows to the kick volume-wise. And it's kind of nice to have the cymbals having this nice clarity and this consistency of room sound that comes from having these overheads and the room mics not going through the same compressor and even the same EQ as the spot mics. So that then when a downbeat happens and there's a cymbal crash, that just floats out there till it dies out, versus it being kind of drowned out by the kick drum. So the cymbal would sound like, that kind of choppy sort of sound, which we're used to. And maybe I'll go back and say, no, I want the choppy sound. But I like this idea. I like the concept. And so far in the mix, it sounds cool. So what I was listening to right there at the end, even still in mono, the snare is snapping a lot more. The kick drum feels less loose and kind of just flabby and more contained and tight and punchy. And I think once we get bass and electrics in the same ballpark of nice and tight, it's going to be sounding good. That snare has just the right amount, for me, the right amount of snap that cuts through the entire mix, but still having some life to it. A lot of times I'll hear mixes where they'll do really aggressive compression on the snare, and all you hear almost is like this, like a finger snapping. It loses all the body. I feel like with the parallel compression that we did, and by the way, if you didn't catch what that was, I'll show it to you one more time. This is a Studio One thing, but more and more compressors have this built in. So I've got a compressor set to an aggressive amount of compression, as you can see here, 10 dB of gain reduction, which means I have to use the makeup gain of almost 10 dB to get the volume about the same, and that's overly compressed. But there's a mix knob, just like on a reverb or a delay, I almost said pedal, but also on a plug-in, where 100% is all the compressed signal, 0% is just the dry signal with no compression, 50 is half and half. This is the idea of parallel compression, where you could do this on multiple buses. I could duplicate the snare and heavily compress one. Studio One even has the ability to create these cool routing matrices where I can run the snare through the compressor and then not through it on the other side, and all that stuff that I do not think is necessary on this particular mix. So yeah, I think just using the mix knob worked out really well, and I would be surprised if I changed that later, but like I said, I might. But I think we've done good work. We've got overall a better drum tone and better kick tone, and we've dealt with the room mics and the overheads in a way that I think they'll be more manageable as we start adding more things into the mix, mainly vocals, also the guitars and the keys and things like that. But we should start making some pretty big leaps and bounds in the coming weeks as we go through these tracks, now that we've kind of laid this pretty good foundation. As always, if you want to mix this song with me, it's absolutely free. Just go to the link below the video, and you can sign up to receive these exact tracks to my song Mission, pull them into your session, follow along with me, copy me as much as you want, or not at all, and do your own thing and see how the two turn out. It's really fun, really educational. It'll really help you move forward in your mixing, and I hope you'll do it. All right, till next time, see ya.